Hey, I'm Scott,
And I'm Charity.
and we're pastors of Saint City, a church outside of St. Louis.
We've been together over 15 years
And we've been through a lot.
and are going through a lot.
We failed and succeeded,
We've flown and we've fallen.
and we've lived a whole lot of life along the way.
We've worked together more than 15 years in marriage, in ministry, business, and parenting.
And did I mention we have 4 kids, 9 and under?
And if we've learned anything, it's that life is not about the arrival.
It's about all the life along the way. Hey.
Hello.
Guess what?
What?
It is our first double-digit episode of the podcast, Life Along the Way.
Oh my goodness. So we're on our 10th episode.
We made it. 2 numbers, 2 digits.
Big deal.
It is a big deal. Because you know what? That means that we've done 10.
There's significance behind it.
Right. It's
Right?
just so cool.
Yeah,
Right.
for sure.
Well, we've got some fun this week because we are going to talk about strengths and weaknesses. And weaknesses. So, literally, we wanted to have some fun on this episode, and we wanted to talk about our strengths and weaknesses and how we kind of fill those gaps, and then how we just kind of laugh at our weaknesses and we acknowledge them. And very rarely are we like kind of just sad that we have weaknesses.
You know, I think what it is that we just know that if you're not going to laugh, you're going to end up crying. And so
Yeah.
you have to have that perspective on life sometimes, that you have to find the funny.
So the way we're going to start this episode out this week is we would like to just kind of answer questions for each other. And so here's what we're going to do. I am going to ask Charity one of her weaknesses, and then she will answer, and then I will list one of her strengths, and then we'll trade.
It would be a lot more fun if we did it the opposite way, but I'm not sure it would be healthy for our marriage.
Right. So we're going to tell on ourselves, and then we're going to edify each other.
And we can act like we had no idea that we're bad at what we're saying we're bad at.
Right. So it's better if you tell on yourself than if someone tells on you.
Yeah.
Charity in our episodes, always telling my business. Right?
Right.
Okay. So I would like to start off by saying something that I believe you are incredibly good at. And I thank God almost every single day for this. And it is your ability to cook some amazing food, in particular, enchiladas, Italian beef, Italian chicken, homemade pizza, dumplings, homemade biscuits and gravy. Let me get off of the carb train and say, if you have to, you can cook some amazing steak too. And I just want to say, my body, my heart, and my spirit thanks you for your ability to make amazing food.
Aw, that's so sweet. It makes me feel good because I love to cook. And so whenever I hear somebody enjoys what I'm making, I'm like Santa Claus's wife on Rudolph. Eat, Papa, eat.
Well, listen, I love it when I'm able to eat food that she makes. And I've got to be honest, when people come over, I get concerned about how much is going to be left over when they leave, when it's Charity's food.
He does.
And I get a little anxiety.
He's like, whenever we're going somewhere, he'll be like, oh, you're bringing both of those pans? I don't know if we need both of them.
Especially when it comes to enchiladas.
Yeah.
I mean,
Which is funny because that's not really even my favorite dish, but I know it makes you happy.
it does make me happy. It gives me joy.
Yeah. So, yeah, I love to cook. And I did not realize, because I love to cook, that there are people out there that literally hate to cook. Like, they hate it. And one of my weaknesses that I don't like doing is laundry. I am so bad at it. We get backed up. Whenever I do it, it very seldom gets put into the drawers the same time it gets washed. And I'm bad at it, guys. It's just monotonous, and I have to go up and down the stairs a million times. And I feel like every time I sort it out, then it gets unsorted. And I know it's something that should be very simple, but I'm just very bad at it.
Every day in our house, there are a minimum of 12 socks worn, 6 pairs of underwear.
I'm really bad
6
at
pants,
socks.
6 shirts, and that's without changing
Pajamas,
anything.
out of school clothes.
And so there is at minimum a large load of laundry every day.
Which does not get done every day because I'm really bad at laundry because I hate it. And so, yeah, I'm always backed up, and it's totally my fault.
And that's why I have 25 pairs of underwear.
You
Just
don't
kidding.
have 25.
My 2 top drawers are full of breeches.
Well, really, you only need a couple because it's like inside, outside, front and back.
And then inside outside. Again.
Right?
Yeah, right.
No, we don't do that. That's disgusting.
Well,
But
I mean,
it
that's
could be done. Just
one
saying.
of Hope's favorite movies, Big Hero 6.
Yeah.
That's what the sign dragon guy says.
Yeah. So true story. I have felt shame since we've been together about being horrible at keeping up with laundry. And I was recently watching a TikTok because I'm cool now, guys, and I watch TikTok. And
I didn't know Marie Kondo had a TikTok.
It's not Marie Kondo.
Oh,
it's
sorry.
somebody else. But there is a woman on there, and she has an entire podcast trying to normalize like normal houses. And she made this statement that tasks like laundry are morally neutral. So if they don't get done, it does not mean you're a morally bad person.
You need to stop listening to that person. Because I feel like she ain't helping a sister. And she ain't helping a brother either. Let's have a little fun on this.
So at the end of this episode, we're going to start.
Is that considered kicking someone when they're down, or is that considered helping someone express their weakness?
That is considered ensuring you don't have enchiladas for a month.
That's not going to happen. There's other things that I could pull away.
So anyway, I had always felt just a lot of shame for not having everything perfect and everything organized. I've always wanted to be a type A person, and I try really hard. But the weird thing is with my personality is I'm a perfectionist. But you think a perfectionist would want everything exactly right. But my thing is, if I don't have time to get it exactly the way I want it and to do it well, I would rather like do something else.
Yeah, your need for perfection impacts your productivity.
Right. Thank you. I'm so glad you know all my weaknesses.
No, it's great.
Thank you.
It's great.
And so
it's great to know you.
But anyway, so listening to that and
getting to know you, getting to know all about you. That's what our listeners feel like right now.
Yeah.
They're listening. What play? What production is that from?
Isn't it Sound of Music?
I think it's Hello Dolly, but I could be wrong.
I don't know.
I just say
totally
everything's
wrong.
Hello Dolly.
If it's not Rodgers and Hammerstein, I really don't know.
You're so strange.
But anyway, realizing that certain tasks are not morally, they're morally neutral was kind of eye-opening to me in that.
Yeah. But me having clean underwear is not morally neutral. Right?
Right.
Right. But I really like this person that you've been listening to.
And so.
Was this a Christian woman, or was this a generic?
Are you done?
Or was this a generic person? Who is this person who's saying that it's not important to do the laundry?
She's not saying it's not important to do the laundry. She's saying if you don't get everything done to the full capacity of like perfect all the time, it doesn't mean that you're a sinful person. It means
I would agree with it.
That's what it's saying. Because
to an extent. No, I'm just kidding. I'm having fun this episode.
I'm glad you're having fun.
I have a feeling that I'm not going to be getting enchiladas for a while. Now that she said that, I can cut loose.
Anyway, like I was saying, with my personality type, like there is shame with not having everything perfect because in my mind, I have a certain thing and I want to do, but whenever you have 4 kids, it's like not often I get to go and like redo a task or reorganize or get something the way I want it. And so sometimes I feel like I'm just maintaining and not like making headway with certain things. And so her saying that made me realize like, hey, like life is life and my kids have clothes to wear. It's okay. No one's going to die if all the socks are not having matches and
it's a good thing, right?
And there's loads that I need to do.
Them babies would be dead because they got different color socks on every day.
They do.
But that show Punky Brewster came back out. And so like the whole different socks thing is like a big deal right now.
Yeah.
It's a good thing. I always have matching socks because we hunt them down like dogs to find my socks. Our children throw my shoes and my socks everywhere. But you're always on the ball with my socks because that I will rain down a fire from heaven of terror if I cannot find underwear or socks, right?
Yes.
I'll complain for real. Like my day will start off wrong.
Which means my day starts off wrong.
Right. I have to get up. And so there are some things that I don't do for myself that I need someone else to do. And then I don't just need them to be done. I need them to be done a certain way. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've got some issues, but that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about strengths and weaknesses.
So, anyway.
And so my wife was about to talk about one of my strengths.
With the whole laundry thing, I did not realize, coming back to like cooking be one of my strengths, and I like to do it, that there are people out there that hate to cook as much as I hate to do laundry. I had never even thought about that. And so being able to look at it and see that like, hey, like cooking and trying to like
and
get healthy recipes.
My number is because we're going to hire you, right? Is that what, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, those eyes are full of fire. My goodness. I always say we need to get help. Like, let's get help in our weaknesses. And I think that's what this episode is all about. Being transparent about our weaknesses.
Oh, we're being transparent.
Talking about how we can get help in those areas in which we are weak. And so I believe that we need to teach our oldest child to do the laundry. Mm-hmm. Don't you think that's a good idea?
Yeah.
We'll get her a stool because she's not tall enough to really see in the thing. But I think, you know what? She's 9, and I think that would be an amazing, what do you call them? When the kid does chore. Yeah, they don't do too many chores at our house. It's kind of bad, right?
Yeah, that's my job.
Why don't we get her to do that?
Okay, that would be a great thing for us to talk about after the podcast.
After the episode.
Oh my gosh, yes, the episode, not the podcast.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway, but I did not realize that I know everyone's wired differently, but I did not realize that certain tasks that are fun to me are actually not fun to other people. And so everyone's wired differently. And yes, I still need to do laundry. And yes, the people that hate cooking still need to feed their family. But by me like realizing that, hey, that is a strength I have, and my kids are going to grow up and they might think, man, I never had matching socks, but they'll be able to be like, hey, mom always cooked. She always showed us how to cook. And so there's give and take. And so that's something that helped me mentally not be down on myself and to let myself off the hook, not to do laundry. Don't get worried, but I'm
not worried. I don't know why you would say that.
Not to be perfect all the time. So.
Well, I'm just excited to be able to be the fun sidekick on this episode because I'm just going to be fun and quirky and have fun. So get ready.
So I'm supposed to say something that you're good at now?
Oh, yeah.
Long pause. Something that Scott is really, really good at is that he can fix anything. He can literally fix anything. If he's a visual person. And I mean, a lot of times when you say like visual learner, you think, oh, that means you can't read a book and learn it. But if he can get his hands on it, and if it's something he is interested in, whether it's like reading an article or seeing a YouTube video, like he can fix it. He can fix appliances. He can fix cars. He can fix toys. He can fix like all sorts of cameras and media equipment. And I think that's really cool because I think we've saved like tens of thousands of dollars because you've been able to fix things. And also we've been able to stretch our dollars more because if he finds something that someone else might be getting rid of or throwing away that he knows how to fix, like a lot of times our computers, he'll find like a really good computer with like a really good skeleton that has just something small that no one else wants to solder together, and he'll get it home and he'll get all his cool little tools out and he'll fix it. And it saves us a ton of money. And it's really nice not to have to worry about someone else coming in to make sure that things are fixed.
That's awesome. You know, I get that from my grandpa.
Yeah.
My grandpa
His
Cox.
grandpa was a tinkerer.
He really was. And he could I just was enamored with his ability to fix stuff.
And you know what? I did not realize, like with the whole cooking and laundry thing, I did not realize that like people were not into that kind of stuff because my dad was like that. My dad was a very like fix it, he can build it, he can do it type of person. But when I got older and I saw like some of my brothers not so much like that and some people that I had dated, and then I realized like, oh man, like not everyone's like that. And so being around people that weren't like that and then being around you where you're able to fix things and make them work, it like makes me appreciate it more because I realize that sometimes people aren't wired like that and it makes things kind of more expensive and harder.
So what you're saying in essence is that it's just awesome to have me
Fix things.
Oh, okay. Well, same thing, tomato. So I would probably say one of my weaknesses is procrastination. And what that has done is procrastination has forced me in the moment to be highly productive in a short amount of time, but it's also set me up for a lot of stress and a lot of pressure in moments and in situations when if I would have been more prepared or spent time working on something in advance, it would not be as earth-shattering and painstaking to accomplish some things that I do last minute.
Well, and so Scott is not a neurotypical person, which means that his brain is wired differently. And so as he's gotten older and we've been together, he's been able to realize that and play on those strengths and those weaknesses and not see it as something that hurts him, but see it as something that helps him. So yeah, the weakness is he can have a tendency to procrastinate because he's not neurotypical. However, people that are wired that way, they're also like studs at switching gears and going from one high productivity to another high productivity. And so by being able to, instead of just stay in one lane and feeling like everything is just blah and dragging on and you're never going to get it done, you know, we've learned that you can take that superpower of being able to be, you know, very focused if it's a high intensity moment, and switching from lane to lane to lane. And when you do that, you stay in kind of that high productivity mindset and you don't get bored or overwhelmed. And so, yeah, it's a weakness, but we've been able to kind of use knowing how you're wired and set you up for success.
Yeah, wow, it is so much nicer for you to talk about my weaknesses than for me to talk about yours. That was like incredibly edifying. I'm ashamed at the way that I talked about you just a few minutes ago because, I mean, come on. Like that was a scientific explanation of why my weakness makes me great. So that's amazing.
That turned like the weakness into a superpower.
Thank you for that.
Because most people would not be able to function at the high capacity as far as like so much with the business, so much with this, so much with that. But because
Men, let me just tell you, when you find yourself a woman who can make you feel great about your weakness, holy cow, you've got something there. And women, if you find some jerk who wants to talk about you don't do the laundry well or often enough, keep moving along. Let's just say it that way, right? Wow.
But you're able to take the way you're wired and turn it into a superpower, because a lot of times we focus so much on our weaknesses when we can really like lean into our strengths. There was actually at the university we went to, at Greenville University, they did something for all incoming students called Strengths Finder, where you go through and you figure out how you're wired and your strengths. And then once you know what your strengths are, you can lean into those. Now, sometimes we know some of our strengths. A lot of times we know what we're not good at, even if we don't admit that to ourselves. But the whole premise behind Strengths Finder is that they did a study on people that had an inclination to read really well. And then they put those people with a group of other people that they could read average, but that was not their strength. And they had them all go through this speed reading class. Now, the people that could just read average and did not have an inclination towards reading being a strength, they got like 2 or 3 times faster, which was really good. Now, the people who that was their strength, they got something like 15 or 20 times faster, because they were wired to do well at that already. And so the whole premise behind Strengths Finder is using your strengths and leaning into them, because the more energy we put into our strengths, the better return we're going to have. We can put a lot of energy into our weaknesses and it not get much better. Now, it's good to be aware of the weaknesses, but if we put that same amount of energy into our strengths, then those will be magnified enough that it will counter our weaknesses. And it's okay. I mean, there's really no such thing as balance.
The knowledge of your weakness is empowering, because you don't avoid them, but you make sure that you take time and you place people in your life that can help you succeed in areas that you're weak or you're not as strong as other areas. And but not just the knowledge of where you're good, but putting into practice the increasing strength in the areas where you are proficient or better. Can increase your capacity to do that even better. And
it's like making a good investment. Why would you go and you might really, really want like a certain company, the shoe company, to make money back for you. And you can put money into it and they're able to use that and make productivity a little bit, but you're gonna be capped. Where if you know that you're really good at helping run a company that is like a swimming pool company, if you put the money there, your capacity for your profit is going to go up because you're already lent to it. So sometimes we try to spend all our money, like investing, like all our energy investing in our weaknesses, because there's shame in what we're not good at. And that's what we naturally focus on. And when we do that, we take away our capacity to increase our strengths, which actually counters our weaknesses. And honestly, sometimes we just need to let go of the things that we're not great at and get help, lean into a spouse, set up systems that help with that sort of thing, automate things. And so it's really, sometimes you don't want to die on a hill just for the sake of dying on a hill. Sometimes it's time to change the way you look at it, to get help, to get support, and to put in a plan. So
time for another strength of yours.
Oh, baking.
You are, go from cooking to baking. So you are incredibly good with numbers, whether that's structuring, accounting or finance or itemizing or inventory or just overall budgeting. You are incredible with that. And some of that was identified in some jobs that you had early on when we were married as a bookkeeper. And you grew from teller to bookkeeper of 7 locations to bookkeeper of Fed accounts to bookkeeper of 27 churches. And there was just some really cool things that grew because the more you pressed into what you were good at, you began to see you had some legit capacity to do some pretty awesome stuff.
And I think part of it is because there is that perfectionist behind me where I don't necessarily get OCD if things aren't a certain way. I would just rather not do them if they're not going to be done right. And so bookkeeping, like everything always comes out to 0, like you always balance. And so that makes me feel very nice whenever things come up and they're balanced, or whenever we're going to do something and we know exactly how to plan it out, like we did an egg hunt. And I didn't want to just come in here and just, let's start with this many eggs or this. No, let's like count how many things. Let's put a certain amount and so many eggs, certain amount and so many families. And it just makes me feel like there is completion and efficiency.
It's amazing.
But I haven't always liked doing it just because it can be stressful if you're doing it for other people, or if...
Well, because other people in your family do it, I think that you like to be different sometimes a little bit. You don't like to just be like everyone else. And so you're like, no, I don't want to do the things that...
Because my dad and my
does.
brother Larry and my brother Jason are like super numbers minded. Yeah.
Right.
But I think sometimes I didn't like it in past seasons I was doing it because it can be stressful. And if I don't have enough time or energy to put into it to make it perfect, it stresses me out. And so like having a lot of kids and being responsible for certain things, it can be stressful because I want them to be done well.
So as you're sharing your weakness on this next one, I thought of something that happened in our premarital counseling with Pastor Grogan, and something that was said. And I thought maybe you could talk about that a little bit.
Okay. So when Scott and I had premarital counseling, we went through and we took all these tests. I don't even know what they were because we were really young. I was 20, you were 22. And what it turned out reflecting is that I sometimes lack the capacity to be compassionate to people that I'm close to.
Or who are sick, or
His
in need of care, or nasal spray. That, if you haven't listened to the last episode, you should listen to it again. But
so the exact words
episode 9, if you need to know, episode 9.
The exact words out of the pastor's mouth were, "You would not be a good nurse because you're the type of person that kicks a dog when it's down."
It was the worst thing to hear. I mean, Pastor Grogan would just get after whatever it is.
But there was the caveat. He said, now some of that might be, magnified because you're like a month away from your wedding and everything's getting planned. So that might not be a true reflection. But I would have to agree that I think that I would be better suited as like a surgeon that just gets in there and does it and then gets out than a nurse.
Yeah, and I don't
like,
think
has the
so
compassion of a
much
saint.
that you lack compassion, because you have compassion for outreach and benevolence and so many things. But when it comes to prolonged care of someone who is sick or needy,
A husband.
after a certain amount of time, you're just really like, are you done yet?
So I do have a bad tendency to, if there's too much, I don't like whining. And especially if it's something that I've done or I know that it sucks, but you can get through it. It's kind of like, okay, everyone knows you don't like this. You're fine. Take a Tylenol, pull up your panties and get on with life. Like, you're fine. That is kind of my line. And so I do realize that I need to be better about that. I have
Even
tried
the way
to
that
be
you
better.
said that shows that like legitimate feelings were spoken. I don't know. Even the words you chose, instead of like pull up your big boy pants, you used like other, wow.
And it also, I have to be cognizant of that weakness in ministry, because if someone does not know God at all, if someone's struggling or they're just in the midst of something really hard, it's really easy for me to show them grace. If somebody is going through like an issue, then maybe they already know God or they kind of do, but it's like a petty issue. I do have the tendency to be like, are you serious right now? And so I have to be aware of that.
You don't say that.
No, I don't say that.
That wasn't, you were talking about some inward.
Yeah, these are inward feelings. And so I need to, like, when I have that thought, I need to like, okay, God, I know that's not a good thought. I know that's not the way that you're wired. Help me see the situation through your eyes. And I do feel like since I've been able to do that, I mean, I think like 10 years ago it was way worse. But since we've been in ministry, I've been able to back up and realize that like everyone's walking through something, and it's just as hard to one person that maybe I don't think that should be something that's very difficult as maybe someone that's in the middle of addiction. And everyone needs the same amount of grace.
Yeah.
And, you know, I can't compare my struggles with other people's struggles because, like we've said before, comparison is the thief of joy. And so it can't be something, well, I did that and that's not a big deal because I'm not the same person. I don't have the same life experiences as someone else or the same capacities or same weaknesses, whatever. And so I could be going through the exact same thing as someone else and them having a hard time. And that's okay because I'm not the same person. And there's things that I walk through that I have a hard time with that other people breeze through and it's not. So being self-aware of your weaknesses, I do think is really important because you can see that you're not just looking at the world as it is, you're looking at it through a lens. And so realizing that, okay, I need to back up. How am I looking at the situation? This is not how God would be looking at the situation. It's really transformed the way I've been able to interact with people in ministry. However, at home, I'm still working on that, especially with man colds.
You're doing great. All right, something good. Come on, shoot.
Okay.
Shoot me, hit me.
Let's see. Scott's really, really good at making people feel well, like making friends and making people feel welcome and not having this awkward, sometimes for me, if I'm in a situation, it's easy for me to just kind of be in a corner if I don't know anyone or if I'm not leading it. And whenever I think of certain situations, I'm like, oh, I don't know why to do that. But Scott is like super good and confident at being able to walk into any situation and be totally comfortable making friends, jumping in conversation, making people feel welcome, pulling other people into conversation. He's really good at kind of finding the person that might be having a hard time and focusing on them and bringing them in to be part of the group. He's like always trying to pull the loner into the group, which whenever we met at college, he did that. And it was one of my favorite things about him. And so, especially like older people, he loves people in nursing homes. And sometimes it can be hard to relate to people that are not in your generation. And Scott would literally go for hours and days above what he was supposed to for his class and just go and hang out with people that had dementia and had no family around. And he's just really good about that. And he's really good about wanting to hear other people's stories and being genuinely like wanting to know people, like genuinely loving people. And sometimes that is hard for me just to jump in if I'm feeling not confident or insecure one day, and Scott's not like that. So it's really cool because anytime we go anywhere together, I feel comfortable because I know that he's able to insert us into what's going on and make sure that we are part of the experience.
Yeah. So this is a tough one for me to shoot at about my weakness because it seems slightly in opposition to what you just considered a strength, but it's not. It's something that I have a tendency to fall into if I'm not careful. And Charity has the permission to call me out and kind of say, hey, you need to do this. But I have a tendency in stressful situations or during times where I've been being very productive and going to pull back, put myself in isolation, and almost respond in exact opposition to what everyone else sees as my extrovertedness and become hyper introverted.
Like you're an introverted extrovert.
Yes. And so what happens a lot of times is that I'm able to lean into being around people and having such high activity that it's almost as though I get a little overwhelmed and I feel like I've been in a boxing ring and I have to come back, pull back, and recover. And that makes it a little troublesome because my kids don't know how to turn off Dad is fun and Dad is always there. And so what happens if I'm not careful for the drive back to the house before work or the drive back to the house after being in with people in our church or in our community where we're serving is that if I don't breathe, if I don't take time and walk back into the house intentionally and prayed up and prepared, sometimes I have a tendency to be stressed and have some anxiousness and frustration with the kids that's completely misplaced, because not because I feel like I have to perform in those situations, but because the way that I respond in environments with other people is with extrovertedness. It's the way I interact. However, in order for me to recover from that interaction, the exact opposite needs to take place. And so if I'm not careful, I have a tendency not to communicate and build sustaining relationships that aren't just for business or aren't mentoring and discipleship relationships, but ones that actually are beneficial to me in allowing other people to speak into my life and to have access to what's really going on in my own heart. And so there's like this weakness that is a tendency to isolate.
Well, and some extroverts, they actually get energized by being around people. And in certain situations, you do. But if you are in leadership in a certain situation, whether it's work, whether it's like we're going to a conference, and it's like if you have to be on because there's something going on, or you have to be engaged because we are at a network meeting, or you are teaching a class, or you're giving a proposal in person, that seems to like drain you a lot more than if we're just out and you meet friends at a table and you're having a good time.
Right. And a lot of times right before a trip, even if there's purpose behind it, or we're going to meet other people in a network or do something for business or even for vacation, I'm worn out, stressed, and not looking forward to the travel, not necessarily looking forward to being there until I get there, and then I'm able to get set in what that rhythm is going to be.
Yeah, which we've kind of figured out the rhythm of that. And so that's why it's important. Like for me, if we're, at a network meeting or at a conference, for me, that's like life-giving, because I'm not always around those things like you have more opportunities in leadership. And so for me, I'm like, hey, let's go to every single session. Let's get together with every single thing. But realizing that for Scott, that can actually be draining too, is being aware of that and setting you up for success and not for failure. Because if you're going to have a hard time, we're going to have a hard time. And so it's better for us to be like, okay, you know what, let's take this session off, or like you've had 2 classes, we can't set up a back-to-back thing where you're doing 2 discipleship classes. You're going to need to have a day in between, or maybe we need to have an extra day at the end of this trip. And so it's just being cognizant of that and knowing that you have to know what refuels you. So you might see it as a weakness in trying to isolate, but that's really a coping mechanism, and we can avoid the isolation part of that if we just schedule in recharge
you're
times.
A big part of the health of this and helping me make sure that I remain in a healthy space, because you'll say, when was the last time you reached out to, and you'll say somebody who I lean into, or you'll just communicate and say, how you doing? You're being quiet. You okay?
Which is not normal for you.
What are you thinking about? And usually if I'm quiet, I'm thinking, I'm processing, or I'm trying to like recover from a high processing, heavy decision fatigue season. And so what ends up happening is I'm just coping from my own personality sometimes. I'm just trying to cope from being on all the time.
Being on. Yep.
Yeah.
Which is an extroverted thing. So knowing that is a good thing.
It is. So I want to encourage you, like if you have someone who you're close to kind of play this game where you say something edifying about them and allow there to be transparency where they're able to say their weakness. You'll be able to see if they struggle with identifying their weakness. You'll also be able to see if they're petty about their weakness, if they're authentic about what true weakness is, or if they want to just give a sleek little response to something.
My weakness is I just try too hard and I work too hard.
Yeah, like Michael Scott, but those are also my strengths.
strengths.
So I want to encourage you to have authentic relationships where you can be transparent about your strengths and weaknesses, and not that you go to someone and you talk about your strengths. But it's important to have people in your life who edify you and encourage you in your strengths, but also are transparent, and it's a safe space for you to have conversations about your weaknesses. One of the best places that we see this take place biblically is through discipleship.
Yeah, sure.
One of the things that I wanted to share for our scripture verse for this episode is 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9. It says, "But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me." As believers, we are supposed to be able to talk about our weaknesses so that the testimony of Christ and his spirit and his presence and transformation in our life is the only area that gets the glory. I believe that God gets the glory for you being such a good cook. I believe that God gets the glory for you being such a good budgeter. And I just get to be a bystander of how we're doing financially because you're so good with that. So I just believe that when we place ourselves in a position to be mentored and discipled to grow closer to the Lord, we're also placing ourselves in a space where we can be authentic and we can be encouraged and pulled up with genuine relationship. And that's the biblical model of discipleship.
Yeah, and I think it's important to realize that, God gave us our strengths, but he also created us to have maybe more capacity in certain areas than other areas. And we shouldn't just see those as weaknesses. This is how I'm deficit. We should see those as opportunities for God to come through and shine through in those weaknesses.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of times when I'm doing stuff, I'll just, in my mind, if it's a weakness I'm having, God, I can't do this. You're going to have to do this. And then at the end of that task, at the end of that situation, I can truly say, I know that was God because I did not have the mental capacity to deal with that.
Your weakness is opportunity for God to show his strength.
Yeah.
And if God can show off in our weakness, we can't take the credit.
Exactly.
It's so good because I like to take credit. Right? You don't, but I do. And if it's me, I'm going to tell you. But if it's not, I'm going to say that was God, because there is no way that could have happened if I had anything to do with it.
Right.
It's been so fun to do this. It's fun to edify you, and it's fun to tease you when you talk about your weaknesses. And you do this so much better than I do. And I just want to say thank you for being just an awesome partner.
You're trying to earn back those enchiladas, aren't you?
You're also very smart. That is one of your strengths, intelligence and emotional intelligence. We want to thank you for joining us on this week's episode and say, hey, sometimes you just have to have a break from the monotony and have fun. Talk about your strengths, talk about your weaknesses, because authenticity is about the journey. And so I want you to know that we are excited for you to be with us here on episode 10. We can't wait for what's coming up, and we can't wait for you to join us right here on Life Along the Way.
Yeah. So we will see you later. Make sure that you share and like our podcast so you can hear all the new episodes coming up.
That's right.
We'll see you later, guys.